We said last week that after the Sao Song dynasty was established, it wasn't able to regain its lands in the north from the Jin, and the North Song's old capital became a key city in the enemy's hand. Therefore, people were often bitterly disappointed in the status quo, and they earnestly wished they could defeat these invaders one day and took back what used to belong to them. This sentiment developed into a major theme in poetry during this period. Hundreds of poets kept lamenting about the situation and their wish. Let's take a look at the map again. This is roughly where the South Song was. So all the way from this line to the south. And all this vast area in the north now belonged to the Jin dynasty. These two regimes were now in peace and remained like this for the next 100 years. There was usually two connected moods surrounding these sort of poems. On one hand, there was this anger and hatred towards the enemies. But on the other hand, more often and more profoundly, there was also huge disappointment and fury towards the royal court and its administration for not trying hard. In fact, at the beginning of the South Song, it was the emperor's preference and calculated strategy to avoid any major wars, to stay in the new capital to continue with a rather peaceful and lavish lifestyle. Again, there were many reasons for this, which we are not going to talk about today. In fact, even when the South Song managed to defeat the Jin army at some point, the royal court bizarrely felt uneasy and anxious, and was quickly to sign a peace treaty with the Jin regime to keep the status quo. Under this background, there were many heartbreaking tragedies, culminating in the story of the great hero Yue Fei, who, despite crushing the enemies, was eventually forced to retreat and murdered by the ministers in the administration of his own country. It was yet another very sad page in the history of China. The poem we are looking at today is one such poem, a critical and satirical one, to reflect the resentment people strong felt toward the situation. Its author, Lin Sheng, was not any prominent poet. We don't know much about his life, and this poem was possibly his only work that has been remembered by people today. But this poem is so sharp and truthful, it's very impressive and memorable, and could easily rank one of the best in the category, if not the best. The title is 题临安邸. Now, 题 means to write something up. We've seen the character before in the poem 题西陵壁 by the great Su Shi. In the old days, there was a tradition that if a poet created an impromptu poem, he could write it up on certain walls, the situation permitting, such as a wall in a temple or a restaurant, etc. Such an act of writing a poem on a wall is called 题. So in Su Shi's example, he was writing up this poem on the wall, 壁, of the Xiling temple. And here, 邸 means a hotel or lodging. Lin'an is another name of Hangzhou, the new capital of the South Song. Some of you may have been to the city before and know it's regarded one of the most beautiful cities in China, with a long history and world-class scenic sites. It's here on the map. This is where Hangzhou is. So this poem was written on a wall at a lodging in the city of Lin'an, or Hangzhou. Let's read this poem together first. 题临安邸，山外青山楼外楼，西湖歌舞几时休？暖风熏得游人醉，只把杭州作汴州。The first line described the beauty and prosperity of the city. Hangzhou had long been a city of trade and wealth in the first place, and after it was set as a new capital, it underwent massive further development and quickly became the new center of economy and culture in China. We need to remember that although the South Song dynasty was weak in military, its economy was very well founded, and with advanced technology and productivity, it could easily generate new wealth and achieve prosperity again. In fact, this was the case in the South Song, that economically it was still exceptionally strong. 山外青山 was describing the natural beauty of Hangzhou. Shan is mountain, Wai is outside, Qing means green. So 山外青山 means there are green mountains outside mountains. So effectively saying there are lots of mountains and implying they are beautiful. 青山, green mountains. You see, in poetry, we don't need to spell out things fully. Only by using certain characters, such as this 青, we could hint it is beautiful and leave a lot of room for imagination how beautiful it is. Mountain after mountain, layer after layer, all green, must be very appealing. Indeed, the city of Hangzhou is next to a range of mountains and full of attractions. And then 楼外楼 used the same language pattern, but this time not about the natural beauty. Instead, it's about prosperity of the city. 楼 is building, so this is saying there are buildings after buildings in the city. And the use of 楼, and also from the context, implies there must be very tall and elaborate buildings. So the first line very concisely and effortlessly described what a fantastic city Hangzhou was, beautiful and extravagant, worthy of the capital of a great country. Later, due to the popularity of this poem, this 楼外楼 was used by someone as a name of a restaurant. And today it still remains one of the most renowned restaurants in Hangzhou. There are quite a few of them, and here are some photos. So if you go there one day, you would know where the name comes from. And you can see this line of the poem as well. And then the next line, 西湖歌舞几时休? 西湖 is a west lake, the name of the most famous lake in Hangzhou. Again, full of history and attractions. Here are some photos of what it looks like now. Even today, the West Lake is still one of the top attractions in China, an absolutely pleasant place to visit. In the old days, there would be big, colorful boats sailing on the lake like this. There would be tourists drinking and sightseeing on the boats, and singers and dancers would perform to the wealthy audiences all day and all night. On the lake bank, it would be the same, with similar entertainment ongoing in halls and theaters in the 楼 of this 楼外楼. So this is what 歌舞 means. 歌 is to sing, and 舞 is to dance. 几 is what, how much. 时 is time. 休 means to rest, to stop. The poet was saying here, you guys are just having fun day and night, singing and dancing. When are you going to stop? When can you stop? Suddenly, the poet's position and the fact that this poem is critical in nature becomes evident. He was disapproving of all this. Why? One of the most important characteristics of the ancient Chinese poetry is its subtlety, that nothing is expressed explicitly. The reader just needed to understand the context and figure it out themselves. Now that I'll explain the background at the beginning, it would be obvious to us that, given what had happened, given the simple fact that the Song Empire still had half of its land in enemy's possession, and that Hangzhou was technically only a temporary, makeshift capital, how could you people conveniently forget about this and irresponsibly enjoy yourselves to such an extent? What is this going to stop? If this second line is only a moderate scolding of the situation, the next two are much sharper and condemning, but again not explicitly. 暖 means warm, 风 is wind or breeze. 熏 is a verb, it means to smoke, as in smoke salmon. It means to inflict some scent, either pleasant or unpleasant, onto something or someone. 得 means to get to the point, to cause. 游人 means tourists, and more generally, people who are sightseeing and enjoying themselves at an outing. 醉 means drunk or intoxicated. The poet was saying this warm breeze on the West Lake was so soothing. it kept giving off its pleasant scent to tourists, to the extent that they were all intoxicated by this 暖风. They were so happy, so joyous, that they might have already forgotten themselves, forgotten where they were now. How so? The last line, deeply satirical and shocking, 只把杭州作汴州. 只 means 简直, almost, essentially. 把 and the 作 are connected here, means to treat something as something else. So these people who are having so much fun now, essentially have considered this Hangzhou as 汴州. What is 汴州? Let's take a look at the map again. 汴州 is a name of the Song's old capital, the original capital of China before it was all lost. So 汴州is here. It's currently Kaifeng. So this is where Song used to be. And now that bit was lost. It used to be the center of everything, this 汴州. And it was undoubtedly the most prosperous city in China and around. And we know now that it was probably the most prosperous city in the entire world at that time. But you people, you seem to have already forgotten this chapter of humiliation and quite happy with the current life now. To you, it appears that to lose that glorious 汴州is not a big deal, and you can easily see Hangzhou as a replacement and become rather contented. Now, all this elaboration is what I said. The poet didn't say that much at all. However, all what I said just now was embedded in the short 7 characters. Disappointed, disapproval, anger, all can be felt here. It's really powerful, such a short poem with such rich and effective content. But there was still no use. We now know that 汴州was never retaken, so the city never went back to its former glory. Nowadays, the city of Kaifeng remains one of the most important historic cities in China, but is no longer the economical and cultural center. That's all. Thank you.